Okay, so I'm in Texas. You'll hear some background noises probably. I'm outside, but I'm under a porch, so I should be shielded from the weather if it decides to rain all of a sudden. I am going to address a couple of things today, some requests. I have not started napping at all today. And I have not touched these nodules that I'm going to be napping. I don't know how they'll work out. This one I don't know where I got these. So they're probably both Texas stuff, but can't guarantee it. So yeah, I've got requests to work on gnarly nodules. I've got a video called Napping Gnarly Nodules and various other videos that are mainly concerned with spalling and bifacing. But anyway, I always get requests to do this, and I found out that those other videos I just mentioned are usually watched several times over and over by the guys that request more of the same. So it's not like they're not watching those videos. They just can't get enough of it or enough of them. The napping was fun. I'm still in Texas, but I'm kind of busy doing other things. Still moving stuff around, personal stuff, personal possessions, and looking through things. You know how moves go. I don't have a big place yet in Vermont. All I can do is move stuff into a small storage unit. So I got to do it slowly and pick through what I've got to try to get rid of unnecessary things. And since I've already done that a couple times, it's getting harder and harder. I think I'm down to bare bones of what I want to keep already. So that's what I'll be doing. And I think what I'll also do is until further notice, I think I'm going to conduct my auctions only on Mondays and skip Sundays, I'm doing this spalling and bifacing a little bit late this week, so I'll need Sunday to catch up. It's happening more and more that I need to have an extra day that I don't have to worry about the auction. So that's how that's going to go. So I'll postpone it till Monday, just like last week. Still will be having an auction every week. Okay. I probably should have my little lamp out here. I'll get it out in a little bit when it starts getting darker, I guess. This seems to be raw. Little pockets of concrete. Now, the reason why I get requests to do these spalling videos is because people are making little charcoal briquettes or almonds out of this stuff. They can't get it down to a biface. And they want to know my mindset. They want to know the strategy. The new guys, they want to know what's good stone and what's not. Am I actually trying to spal a good piece of stone or not? Should I heat treat it in a big thing like this or no? Like a big chunk? Or take flakes off and heat treat it? It's almost like a catch-22, They'll say, I can't knock off flakes like this unless it's heat treated. But then again, I can't heat treat it this thick because it's not recommended. True, it is a catch-22. I don't recommend heat treating these big chunks or these gnarly chunks all at once, although it can be done. Some stones will allow you to do that. Most stones will not, because it will be inconsistent. It will be one consistency on the surface, and then when it gets down to the middle where you're trying to biface, it's hard, like the heat didn't get all the way through. So you're thinking, I heat treated it, it's skinning really nice, I'm taking these flakes off really nice, but then when I get to my biface, what happens? It seems like every time I try to biface and try to get it thin, it doesn't work, but I can flake just fine. What the problem is you have nice flaking characteristics on the surface where the heat got to, but the heat didn't get to the middle. Okay, so I don't recommend heating big chunks because that will happen and you have no way of knowing if it's you or the stone. Right? What are the things that new guys want to do immediately? They want to know, or they want to be able to recognize what is good stone and what is not, what is heat treated and what is not. They want to be able to thin pieces, and they want to be able to spall all at the same time, right away and up front. Those three things, probably another one I left out, only occur after years, years of practice. Years. Okay? And even though I have years of practice, I still have difficulty telling someone how to recognize what good stone is, how to thin something thin, and how to spall. I have difficulty explaining this stuff. Is it all subconscious? No, it's not all subconscious. A lot of it is conscious decision making. It can be strategic. I would like it to be all subconscious. That way I don't have to think about it and it goes faster. However, it's more efficient in many cases if you have a strategy. And one strategy, Neanderthals used it and modern humans used it. It's called the Centripetal Levallois technique. I'll put the spelling in the description. Centripetal Levallois, it's a French word. Levallois is a French word. Describes how to zigzag around the outside to produce a biface, and the Levallois flake is the last thinning flake taken on that biface. It usually encompasses quite a bit of one face. I call that a thinning flake because it produces a core that's fairly thin and you have a thinning flake. Both can be used as tools. One is usually used as a core, one as a tool. That's what they assume. But when I'm describing it as a technique for spalling and bifacing, you're not concerned about the thin flake that comes off. You're concerned about the core, and you reduce the core into a biface by continuing to thin it, zigzag around the edges where it's thick, and so forth. Okay? So what the technique does is it uses the previous flake scar as a platform. Now, I was recently tutoring someone on the technique, and one thing I forgot that people do, which he was doing, is they stop the swing just after the strike. They'll stop it so that it looks like what you're doing is this with a bopper, because it'll stop right here on your leg. So he was out here doing the freehand stuff, because I show freehand techniques. That's how I train people. He was stopping right here. He would hit, but he would stop. There was no follow through. All right. One reason I nap the way I nap is because follow through is something that is required. Now you can stop the follow through with a pad. The pad will stop the follow through, but there is still follow through here. But it's deceptive because you don't see it. Here you'll see the follow through. Like when I'm striking, you'll see that I don't stop here after I hit. I don't go like this and stop myself. I follow through and it just disappears from view, in a lot of cases. But I'll follow through. Remember to follow through. That's one thing. That, I took it for granted that people would intuitively pick that up, but not everyone knows to follow through. Okay, so follow through. Two different ways to strike. You can gouge, which means you are hitting to produce a crack right where you're hitting. You're hitting to produce a crack right where you're hitting, and it'll gouge out a little bulb, and then the flake will continue if you're lucky, right? There's also the swiping technique where you're hitting basically on a well-rounded edge. It can't be weak when you're swiping because you only get little flakes. Swiping is when you're removing a flake on the slide. Instead of hitting it on impact, removing the flake, you're removing the flake on the slide. And the sliding or swiping or scraping technique removes thin flakes. So it's good for thinning a thin piece. It's also good if you want to remove a thin flake from the surface of a core like this. That's what you want, if that's part of your strategy, or if you just want to make it smoother or or make it less cortex, right? Cleaner, make it look cleaner or with less cortex. You can just remove the cortex sometimes with a nice thin flake. Nice thin flake. There's a difference between thin flakes and thinning flakes. Okay. Anyway, thought process is just to remove bulky areas. You'll get used to what areas need to be attacked first. There's various ways you can do this. I chose to do this here as a no-brainer, way above center line. Doesn't really matter where the platform is. I know people will tell you different, and I will tell you different sometimes too. Change the position of the platform. But in this case, I just changed the position of the workpiece, hit up high, and utilized the bulb to remove this area. The bulb of percussion, although it's not very pronounced. It didn't go very much past the bulb of percussion. So basically that's a bulb of percussion removal. Right, there's no real term for that, where you use primarily the bulb of percussion or bulb of pressure to remove your mass without much of the continuation of the flake. I'll come up with terms for these things eventually. But I use that tactic here mainly for expediency. Where is it? It was just a quick, easy flake removal. Oh yeah, I removed something from that side. Anyway, I just hit there instead of hitting there many times. It wasn't working. I hit there. You can see the aluminum deposits here where I was striking. That could have removed some of that too. Another way I could have attacked that was making this stronger, because this is a platform, but it's not going to reach all the way across. So you take it back, so-called, so that this will be thicker and stronger. So you'll lower this down, and then you can take a flake across that way. There's various other things. You can even try to overshoot that by making this area stronger, shooting a flake all the way across, and potentially overshoot that area and remove that as well, like that. So there's various ways you can do it. If you find that you're matching the way I do it, like if you're watching me nap and you find that, oh, I seem to be thinking along the same lines as he is, I would have struck there, or I would have taken a flake there also, then yeah, you're getting the hang of it. But it's not the only way. The way I do it, or my strategy, or the positions that or the places that I strike, or the platforms I develop, is not the only way, and it's usually not the most efficient way. Okay, just keep that in mind. It's not the only way, and it's not necessarily the most efficient way. Another thing my friend was doing, was he was hitting into the stone too much. The strikes were into the stone, like he was literally gouging with a gouge to gouge wood out. He wanted to go into the stone with every strike. Every strike was hit, stop, but gouge into the stone. He wanted to just blast into the middle of the stone because, he saw a big area. He wanted a big flake. He would strike inward mainly, And what would happen? He'd get initiation. That's good. He'd get a flake started, which is good. But then it would step fracture right in the middle because he trying to bite off more than he could chew, so to speak. Okay? Because you don't realize, as a new guy, to get a big, thick flake to travel, you need a lot of energy. So he was thinking he was using a lot of energy, but part of the energy was lost when he would stop. He would stop himself. He wouldn't follow through. If you want to use a lot of energy for these large, thick flakes, you have to follow through. And keep in mind that it's going to require probably more energy than you think. Even with a heavy bopper. A lot of times it requires more energy than you think. Now the danger is, okay, fine, more energy than I think. I'm just going to blast away at it then. I'm just going to blast away. You got to be careful with that strategy because you don't know if you produce a flake that looks good, you don't know if you've used too much and got lucky and it was short, right? You don't know if you've used too much, and then the next time you encounter something similar, you use it too much energy and it blows off the other edge with an overshot or just breaks in half, and you would think to yourself, well, last time it worked. Yeah, last time could have been luck because it could have been an extremely difficult spot to get through and you needed that extra power. So my advice is start with downward strikes instead of inward. Don't be forcing inward. Start downward and with less energy than you think. If it doesn't work, increase the energy. Still hitting downward. Increase the energy. Still hitting downward. Still doesn't work, increase the energy. Still hit downward. If it still doesn't work, move over. So like 3 strikes, you're out. If you hit if you hit a same spot 3 times, stop. Move over to a different area or look to see what's happening. Sometimes there's lots of little crushing and cracks. And the strongest platform in the world is one that's crushed. Okay? It's stronger than grinding. It's stronger than any other platform. It will not go. A strong platform is something that resists the blow. You need strong platforms to resist the blow because in order to produce large flakes, that platform cannot be destroyed. It has to remain intact, especially with long flakes, especially with thinning flakes, especially with thin bifaces. That platform cannot fail. Now, does that mean you need to have a little bit of crushing going on the edges when you're thinning a thin piece? Yes and no. Yes, if you look through a microscope when you're abrading like this, you'll see a lot of crushing. So yes, in that respect. But no, in the respect that you won't. The answer is no. In looking generally at the edge, it does not look crushed. It looks abraded. Okay. So yes, if you look at it through a microscope, but no, if you're looking at it with your eye. Okay. Some guys will actually use magnifiers on the edges to see what they're doing. They're so intent on learning the strategy of flint knapping up front that they'll actually get a magnifying glass or a microscope to look. That's fine, perfectly fine. But just be aware that the answers are different according to what you can see. Okay. I'm thinking of hitting that because it's a pretty good place to hit, but I might just try to attack this turtle back here. Now, why am I staying with such a little piece? Well, I don't know. A lot of times I just chuck this in a pile for later. I might want to just take off a small flake for a small arrowhead. I might just want to take off something like this for a little bitty arrowhead. I'm finding that I have less and less time for the little bitty arrowheads. So I don't do that as often. Just as a side note. Okay. I'm going to continue with this because it's good for the video. All right, so I'm going to try to do a gouging strike because I need to take a lot of mass off. So the rule is swiping is thin, gouging is thick. I wish there was a rhyme in there somewhere, but I don't think so. All right, so here we go. I'm going to gouge this out. I mean, I am going to use inward force, but I'm going to use a lot of force. I am going to use downward force, but it's going to be a lot of force. To continue what I was saying before, start downward, downward, downward strikes instead of inward, downward, downward, and then eventually, gradually, more inward with different strikes as you get more experience. Don't try the inward strikes right away. New guys want to do everything proficiently up front. No, you don't get proficient at long flakes until you are first proficient at short flakes. You can write that down. You need to be proficient at short flakes before you can become proficient at long flakes. Okay, so short flakes, downward is short flakes. Inward, supposedly, will give you a long flake. But one of the hardest things in flint knapping is producing long flakes. Everyone wants to produce long flakes. It's one of the hardest things in flint knapping. Okay, here we go. All right, so I was hitting up higher, I went lower. 2 times I was thinking to myself, I already hit it 2 times, that's a lot of times. Let's drop it down a little bit because I'm not generating enough power. And sure enough, it was because I wasn't generating enough power. But I took off a little bit of that mass instead of attacking this turtleback. I'm going to try again. Make sure it's not weak. Now another issue is sometimes I miss a lot, right? I'm trying to hit it and I miss. There's 2 reasons for that. One, I'm erring on the side of caution. I'm trying to be cautious. Number 2, my readers and the camera and my I don't know how I say it. My instructions that I'm giving you distract me, and that messes with my depth perception. Okay? I miss a lot when I'm on video because of the depth perception issue. My readers, combined with looking through the viewfinder sometimes, combined with narration, I can't focus. So I'd rather miss and be out here and then slowly creep in than to hit way too high or something not correct. Okay, but you can miss on purpose too, just to get the hang of the swing if you want. It just, puts wear and tear on the wrist the more you miss. All right, so here we go. I'm going to try another flake just to flatten that out because I don't know. All right, that's good enough, I suppose. I'm going to start doing the turtleback removal thing. Okay, I can see already there's some concrete. Now if I stop now, could I heat this? Yeah, I could heat this at that thickness, although it's kind of risky because, like I said, the heat doesn't always penetrate, and sometimes when it does penetrate, it'll cause internal stress differences in the stone because it's not consistent. Physics starts to creep in and it might crack on the inside. You won't see it on the outside, but it'll have a crack on the inside. Some kind of stress fracture. If it's thick, just because of the inconsistency in the material and the inconsistency in the heat, there's forces that pull this way, pull that way, push out, that kind of thing, and it might crack in the middle. So I don't recommend this in the heat in the tricky roaster unless you know from experience that you've done these types of stones before and they work out okay when they're thick. This one I don't know. I assume it might be okay, but I won't know until I actually do it, and it's a catch-22. It could be that it works, but you won't know it until it's out of the turkey roaster, and by that time, if it's going to get ruined, it's going to get ruined, and you lost your gamble. All right. I don't know if it's a catch-22 or just a bad bet. All right, here we go. So I hit there with a slide this time. It was a slide. Why a slide? Because I want it kind of shallow, that way it'll travel further. There's a lot of technical stuff in the beginning for you new guys. Shallow can usually travel further. That's what fog guys depend on. Flake over grind. Shallow is longer. One of the rules. All right, shallow has a potential of driving longer because you don't need to overcome as much. You don't need to apply as much force to create that long flake. So I wanted a long flake just because there's a big hump there. I didn't want it to stop like the other one here on the other side, wherever I removed that lump earlier. I didn't want it to stop like this one. I wanted to continue. So it worked out okay. I can use this flake for those of you who are worried that I throw these out. I don't throw these out. I save these. Anything that seems like it can be usable, especially if I can heat treat it. This looks like a prime candidate for heat treating. I'll save it. I'm thinking of deleting that one video. That's my most popular video, that spalling video. Thinking of deleting it because everyone thinks I'm wasting all those flakes that are on the floor. Wow, that's a lot of waste. You only had one cord and all that stuff is just waste. No. It seems like I went like this. My technique has a lot of waste, and I went like this with my hands, and for some reason that means all this in front of us is waste. No. Okay. This is my expression, how I express myself. I do this a lot. All right. Here we go. Okay, turtleback. That removed quite a bit of it. Now, do I want to attack this? Yeah, I do. I don't know where I'm going to attack it, though. Here? Yeah, it would be a good Levallois flake. But it's like the opposite hand. It's like if I was left-handed, yeah, I could hit that pretty easily. But I'm right-handed, so I got to kind of come in at a weird angle and hopefully take off a flake in this direction. Are the platforms different from gouging and swiping? Yes, they are. How different are they? Exactly what they are. How strong do they need to be? What is the correct angle? La la la. I don't know. Seriously, I don't know. Wish I could tell you. The best thing for new guys, start downward. If in doubt, hit downward, like you're trying to remove a short flake. Sometimes it'll produce a long flake. You know what that means? That means you hit the right angle. I know it's hard to remember what you just did, but that's where the subconscious is handy. It remembers. But the conscious mind can't retrieve that information very easily when it's thinking, when you're thinking consciously. You have to depend on your subconscious to do the same thing again. So don't mess with the subconscious. Don't overthink it. If you hit it and it produces a good flake, okay, clear your mind. Try it again. Don't try to bring in other things like thought processes, thought experiments, and actual thoughts of, imaginations into your subconscious following a good flake. Just continue. If you clutter your subconscious with your thought experiments, with your imaginings, with explanations to yourself, and with other distractions, you will be muddled. Okay? Your subconscious will be in overload. And the next time you try to hit, it's not going to be consistent. Try to clear your mind. If you're striking, just pay attention to those things that can become habit forming, which translates into do the simplest things possible. Don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to try another one like that. Another flake. This is a sliding one too. Why? Because I want it to go further than just a little bit. If I just want to go a little bit, strike downward with a gouging flake and take a little bit. I don't want a little bit. I want a longer flake. I want to swipe it and see how it goes. I don't know how it's going to go. I think it's going to travel along that ridge, but you never know. Okay? And a lot of power because it's a deep flake. Now I hit two hit too gently on the edge, but it still traveled. Gently, it was a powerful strike in terms of speed, but gently in terms of the contact itself. So gentle can mean two things: less speed or less contact. In this case, it was less contact, but it still was okay. One more strike and this video will be over because I'm already at 30 minutes. There we go. I'm going to try to do another flake across here with a swipe. Yeah, not able to do it. I was swinging extremely hard. Let's see, do I have time? I might have time for setting up another platform. Right there. Let's see. This time I'm going to gouge it because I need more power, because that's really thick. This was really thick too, but there was a ridge. This is kind of a ridge, but there's kind of cortex there too. Cortex doesn't count. You got to just eliminate that from the equation because it's not going to help you. It's just going to sit there. All right. Okay, so a gouging strike. It wasn't a slide, it was a gouge, and I took off the majority of that lump. And now I can go to indirect percussion or continue with the direct percussion, but I'd probably go with indirect at this point. Okay? All right.